watched, was a very important role to United States culture and especially the movement of rock and roll, which we'll be talking about today. He was a newcomer for the generations, especially during the 1950s. He brought in a new idea of this kind of bad artist that parents didn't like. You can ask my grandma, she was not allowed to go to concerts. But he really influenced America and really showed how happy we were as a nation. Maybe not the parents, but at least the large majority of the United States, and really exemplified the United States at that time.
By me, darling, stand by me, oh, now, stand by me.
In the previous video you saw a young John Lennon in a 1960s pre-war Vietnam. The Beatles in the 1960s were a very influential band that came over from Europe, out of a small town of Liverpool, which I went to, and I got to see their museum. It was pretty cool. But we got to see Ringo, John Lennon, the rest of them. But during a time when America was in most need, during a time of Vietnam, the Beatles were a very big protesting group that preached love over hate, and were a very iconic rock group that is still listened to today and is considered one of the greatest rock groups of today.
Started with a little kiss like this. Seesaw swinging with the balls in the school and your feet flying up in the air.
Aerosmith was an iconic band in the 1970s that really moves the idea of sex, drugs, and rock and roll through the following decades. And it really embarked on a new idea of this culture. It also distracted the, I guess, everyday people from the ending of the Vietnam War and the start of the Cold War. And they were just a cultural phenomenon that gave the generation in the 70s hope for the following decades.
You've just watched Eddie Van Halen, who is part of one of the Van Halen brothers, who made one of the most iconic rock bands in U.S. history. During a time of drugs and sex, Van Halen was a very big front runner in this young American rock and roll, and showing that kids can now have and voice their opinions. It was a great social outlook for the band, and I mean, if you still ask any person today, they love this iconic band. It was a great part in American history that's never going to be forgotten. And if you haven't heard a song by them, you're obviously missing out in life, because they're so influential, and they just tell you whatever you need to do. Like, if you're going through a tough time, all you gotta do is jump and you'll be better.
Nirvana brought a huge change to the rock and roll culture, and it changed from an idea of sex, drugs, and rock and roll to more of a emotional side that many people, especially teens, were starting to discover about themselves, especially with the lead singer Kurt Cobain, who had a lot of depression issues. He died at a very young age, and his music brought light to a lot of teens, and how they could control their emotions, how they could deal with their emotions through his music. And it really brought out that whole movement with the idea that teenagers, have a voice, that they can really impact the world. And yeah, it just really brought a new, different kind of rock and roll into the culture of America.